Thank
And we
you.
are good, everyone.
Good evening, all, and we'd like to call our meeting to order and begin with the Pledge of Allegiance. May I have a motion for the approval of our agenda?
So moved.
Jeff and Sarah. With all approved? The ayes have it. Thank you so much. And next, we will have an annual public hearing, Code of Conduct, from our Director of Student Services, Shana Kataya.
Yes, good evening. We're happy to have for you our annual update and edits to the Code of Conduct, and we've received some of your edits. I've received those through the superintendent already, so thank you for any catches. Keep those coming. Just a reminder, we're in the second year of this rendition of the Code of Conduct with edits annually. Many of you have heard several presentations over the past couple years about the process that we went through to get to this point. But just as a summary, we had a very large stakeholder group come together with parents, community members, support staff, teachers, administrators, and actually co-facilitated by the Children's Institute and our partners in restorative initiatives. And we spent, Dr. Brogan worked with that group, and then when I took on this role, we worked for over a year to bring some changes that gives it the more restorative lens of what you see in front of you. And the levels of the behaviors that you're seeing in there. And a lot of that also came through the other feedback loops that the finalized document then went through. So our secondary leadership team, elementary leadership team, our district leadership team, central office team, our inclusivity advisory committee, our PTSA and our PDTA all had feedback into that document to kind of get it where it was and make sure it reflected our practices. And then that was when it initially came to the Board of Education for a final edit and approval. And with that came a package of training. That was one of our first considerations, is then how do we make sure this is actually happening in our schools? So we had training for all staff, including support staff, in April of 2022, and the Children's Institute helped us in creating that and some ongoing training that's happened since then. And then we also have annual training. We just approved some of those documents today for the beginning of the year, where all of our students and all of our staff get the same essential documents around what is in the Code of Conduct that we need to know, what is the Dignity for All Students Act, what are my rights, what are my responsibilities, and how can we all help to maintain a safe school environment. So this year, the edits that you've seen came from another working group that worked this past year under Scott Barker, our athletic director, and myself, and we brought together some amazing student athletes as well as our building athletic coordinators, coaches, administrators, and teachers to be able to look at updating the athletic code of conduct. And what we actually ended up doing was incorporating that within our current document. So in looking at the very traditional athletic code of conduct that had been in place for a really long time, they had already made a lot of changes in their practice, and as we went to update that document, we thought that what was within the code of conduct and all the work that had happened up until this point was really where they wanted to be and reflected their current practices. So those are some of those changes in red that you see, because athletics and our extracurriculars are really an extension of the school day, and we wanted to be really clear with all of our constituents that we have the same expectations across the board. So happy to hear any questions and take any edits.
So Shane, I would just also add that as we think about the code of conduct, sometimes people feel that a restorative practice means that you're getting a hug and a free pass and keep going. So this is really, when you look at the code of conduct, it is, here's what you did. We want to make you, help you understand what you did, make amends to what you did, and by the way, there's consequences. So I think that's important for the board to understand, is that this is harder for students in that our goal is for them to not repeat whatever behavior there was, and to better understand their impact on others for their behavior, and be able to using different tools, ways to either apologize, to own, or to make amends for any of the harm they caused.
Thank you.
Okay. So first of all, thank you for all the work that you've done on this. I think our code of conduct is really strong, and I think it lays a really good roadmap for everything we want to accomplish. I was just wondering if you could just talk a little bit about how we measure the success and the impact of the code of conduct on our students and our staff, how we know that we're doing, creating the environment we want to create in our schools.
Yeah,
So Shana, one of the things I would just share right off the bat that's that's going to be difficult is causation versus correlation between the code of conduct in coming out of COVID. So one of the things that we'll do and have done, and we just did last week, was tracking the data from all discipline from every school, disaggregated by every ethnicity and gender, and looked at 3 or 4 years of 3 years of data over time to see how we're doing. So our next step with that data is to actually to pull the individual kids' data that's in front of us, because it can be deceiving. When we look at it, one student can result in 15 referrals, which can skew a whole year's worth of data. One family can result in 30 or 40 referrals. So we're looking really highly at certain aggregate areas around, I would say, our socioeconomic group of students. And our race are disproportionate right now to a lot of what we're doing. So we're trying to figure out the why as of now. I don't know if there's anything more you want to add.
Yeah, I think exactly that. It's not an easy answer. I think it's something we have to keep peeling back and really looking at what that data tells us about how well we are, the restorative practices, as the superintendent said, it's harder for the kids and it's harder for the staff too. So it's much more work to really try and help students take accountability and learn from their actions versus just saying, you're suspended, see you in a couple days, and then come back and move on. So we're getting better at this work, and we're getting better at trying to capture when we're using those practices so that we can say, okay, here's an incident. We see there was something restorative involved. Did it work? Did it not work? What did we do? What do we need to get better at? So as we're getting better and increasing our own training, our own knowledge, we're hoping that we're going to see the impact positively, not just with suspensions, but with our students when we do check-in surveys, when they're checking in with their teachers, when they're expressing to us that they have connected adults in school or not. So it's really about the school culture being supportive of all of our students, and trying to be more proactive and saying, here's the data that we have, how can we drill in and find out what these students need before that pattern continues.
I would also just say the code of conduct isn't necessarily the mechanism to gauge how well we're doing. The code of conduct is really how we do after students make some kind of poor decision. And so it's really how are we measuring our environment, which we'll be talking more about with our strategic initiative.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Are there any other questions? Next, may I have an approval of the minutes from our July 11th reorganizational and regular meeting? Sarah and Dave. So there's been a motion. All in favor? All opposed? Abstentions? Thank you. That motion carries. So we have our Board of Education, Monroe County School Boards Association meetings to look forward to. And shortly, our board will be very busy going into and attending those meetings, and we'll have the ability to report out on those at our next meeting as necessary. Other dates to remember. Key date, September 7th, our school's open. That's very exciting. And our next regularly scheduled meeting is September 12th. Next, we will hear our financial report from Mr. Vespi.
Okay, first for your consideration is the year-end transfers to reserve funds. Very important to take that action prior to setting the tax levy. So just at a high level, we had a capital project vote where we used $14 million of funds out of a capital reserve that had a total balance of $15.1 million. So you can see there's a recommendation to allocate $4 million of year-end fund balance back into that reserve. Extremely important to build that back for emergency capital projects and for really the planning of the next capital project, given the magnitude that we spoke about during that process of, close to, $300 million worth of capital improvements. New is the allocation of the swimming reserve. The only other thing that I'll highlight is we did, make a considerable effort to increase the new transportation vehicle reserve, obviously with the challenges that we face with the cost of electric vehicles being as high as they are, in that $500,000 to $550,000 compared to a school bus that costs about $170,000 now. So that is an area that we'll continue to look at. The nice thing about this is there's a motion tonight for your consideration, and then a follow-up report to the Audit Oversight Committee and a follow-up report to approve that audit at a future board meeting.
Thank you, Mr. Vespi. So with that being said, is there a motion for our year-end transfer to reserve funds? Jeff? And Emily, second. All in favor? All opposed? The ayes have it. That motion carries. Thank you. Next, we will hear tax levy approval and tax collection process.
Yes, again, for your consideration is the that process of really the largest percent of our revenue. So it's first to review the tax rolls, authorize the tax levy, and then sign the tax warrant that will be used in the municipalities that actually collect the taxes. Again, the tax levy we covered during the budget, it was a slight increase of $83,000, probably the lowest increase, historically in quite some time in the district, because of the other factors, again, that we control the tax levy. The equalization rate and the assessment factors are not controlled by the school district. Because of the small levy increase, you can see that, again, for 77% of the taxpayers, you've got a negative tax rate. It's very rare that you would see that, in this process. So everything's laid out as an attachment and for your review and consideration.
Thank you. So with that, is there a motion for our tax levy approval and tax collection process? Kim? Second. Sarah, second. All in favor? All opposed? The ayes have it. The motion carries. Student transportation contracts is next.
Okay, thank you very much for your consideration. Is a general resolution for really, I think, the largest amount that you've seen in transportation contracts, again, with our push to use outside sources to transport in lieu of not really being fully staffed. Not that we're not trying everything that we can, so this is an up to amount. It's important that these contracts be approved prior to the start of school because they are obviously eligible for state aid per board approval. And then because of some of the pricing increases that was based on CPI, there's a transfer that's also included into that category. So again, the dollar amount concerns us, right? But the contracts themselves are aidable up to about 68-70%. So there isn't a revenue offset in future years, and certainly we'll continue to monitor this through the budget process. And again, our focus will be to hire additional bus drivers. We're still, I gave a report today. We're still about 5 drivers short going into the end of the year, despite having trained 10 additional bus drivers last year. So we're considering that our highest priorities, and we're continuing to work on it.
Thank you. Is there a motion for our student transportation contract to approve that? Emily, thank you. And Dave? All in favor? All opposed? The motion carries. Thank you. And next, our bid awards will be a part of the consent agenda. Yes, thank you. And so we will next have a discussion of the temporary deputy purchasing agent.
Yeah, so this is due to a resignation that we recently received, and it's more of a procedural format to have someone named as a backup in that position.
Thank you. Is there a motion to approve our temporary deputy purchasing agent? Sarah and Dave. All in favor? Opposed? The ayes have it. Thank you. Okay. Next, we'll have professional services contracts report.
So this is something that traditionally has been provided to the Board of Education. It's a listing of all of our contracts. It's good to take a look through and review those. And certainly the focus from my vantage point is to make sure that we do requests for proposal for these professional services. So in the upcoming year, we'll pick a few more, the larger contracts to look at doing that request for proposal. I think I've mentioned things like the architect's contract, construction management contracts that we've just recently awarded. Those, really technically are reviewed every 5 years. So some of the larger contracts that we have, we'll be putting out an RFP and going through that process to review those contracts. So it's really important document just for your review and consideration.
Thank you. Next, we will have our human resource report from Mr. Clark.
Good evening. First for your consideration is the professional staff report. You'll see 4 certificated staff appointments, 1 administrator correction of probationary period and effective date. We have 1 managerial confidential salary adjustment, 1 school-related professional appointment, 1 supervisory technical appointment, 1 certificated staff termination due to the position ending, 1 certificated staff resignation, 1 supervisory technical resignation, 2 school-related professional resignations, and we also have fall coaching salaries for your approval.
Is there a motion to accept the professional staff report?
So moved.
Jeff? Emily? All in favor? All opposed? The motion carries.
Thank
Next-
you.
Yes,
Yep,
thank you,
next
sir.
for your consideration is the support staff report. We have 1 clerical appointment, 1 clerical resignation, 1 custodial maintenance resignation, 1 custodial maintenance termination, and 3 food service worker appointments.
Thank you. Is there a motion to accept the support staff report? Kim?
Second.
And Sarah? All in favor? Thank you. The motion carries.
Thank you.
Okay, next we'll have our student services report from Mrs. Kadai.
Good evening again. Very grateful to have Kaylee Northrup and Robin Payno here to be able to share some of the outstanding work that they did, bringing our English as a New Language summer program to fruition in its inaugural year. This has been a dream of especially Kaylee's as our standards leader for our ENL program for quite some time, and there's been an awful lot of work that went into it. So thank you both for everything that you did, and look forward to hearing about their experiences.
All right, hello everyone. My name is Kaylee Northrup. I am the English as a New Language Standards Leader for Pittsford. I'm also the ENL teacher at Hawkins Road Middle School.
And I'm Robin Payno. I'm the counselor at Park Road and a current administrative intern.
And as Shana said, this is our first year getting this program off the ground. I have been in the district for 8 years, and we have talked about a summer program every year that I've been here. And so we finally just decided that this was the year that we were going to go for it. And as you can see from all of those smiling kids on that slide, they had a great time, and we're really excited to share with you what we did over the 3 weeks of our summer program. So first, I would just like to say a very, very heartfelt thank you to everybody on this slide. It really did take a village. We couldn't have done it without anybody on this slide. Thank you very much to the board and to Mike Pirro, to our transportation staff who bused the kids. We had 99% of them on the bus every day, which was excellent because it was a hard stop right at 11:30. They all got right on the bus.
And the most amazing bus drivers,
Yes.
I have to say.
Yep.
Speaking of busing, they were phenomenal.
Greeted them every day
They
with
were
a
so
smile,
good.
high fives. They knew their names by the end of the first day.
Yeah.
Thank you to the CRMS custodial staff. We tried our best to clean up at the end of every day. But we did a lot of arts and hands-on sensory stuff,
Paint.
so they cleaned up after us. Obviously, thank you to Shayna, who was our administrative support and helped us. We've been planning this basically since January of 2023. And to Josh for letting us use the building. I kind of had an in there, so I just said, can we use our building? And he didn't mind. Of course, thank you to all of our ENL Magnet Building administrators, which would be Allen Creek, Menon Center, Calkins Road, and Sutherland High School. These are our pioneer teachers who volunteered to start the year with us, to start this program with us. We had Sherry Zhang, who is an ENL teacher at Menon Center, Alyssa Stanton, who teaches reading at Calkins Road, Jessica Seeger, who teaches science and is a learning specialist at Calkins Road and one of my co-teachers, Lori Dermody, who is also one of my co-teachers at Calkins Road, who teaches 7th and 8th grade social studies, and our ELL students actually go to her for social studies. Emily Lebensky, who teaches reading at Barker Road and doesn't work with ELLs but was really interested and wanted to hop on with us, and David Wakira, who co-teaches with Sherry 3rd grade at Allen Creek. Of course, we need to thank our ESY nurse, who we saw an awful lot of. Which was, we were not expecting that, but we got to know her very well. And of course, we want to thank all of our ELL teachers and their families and all of our students. So in planning this program, we really wanted to stick to our core values as a district. And we kept kind of coming back to our mission statement as our touchstone, our PCSD vision statement and our mission statement as the ENL department. So our goals for the program were, of course, to kind of close that achievement gap and to prevent the summer slide and to give them as much academics as we could fit into 3 weeks. But we also really wanted to collaborate with as many local partners as we could. We really wanted to give our kids as many experiences as we could give them, especially some who had kind of missed some of those annual field trips that a lot of our Pittsford students get to go to. Like a lot of our kids we know already go on the sand patch. But if you've come and you've missed that field trip, we wanted to give them some experiences that they might have missed. We wanted to provide age-appropriate learning opportunities, so we welcomed and opened the program to all of our students, actually pre-K to 12th grade. We had one of our incoming kindergartners join us on this adventure. And of course, the big thing was really just to give them joy. So we really, I think that was one of the most exciting parts of the program, was that we got to see the kids make new friendships and forge stronger friendships with kids who were from their magnet building, but they might not have had ELL class with. The kids who spoke the same language, but who aren't in the same schools, really got to have a great opportunity and experience to forge connections with each other. So these were our goals, and I think we did a really good job sticking to this and really kind of going back to what was our goal, what are our values, what do we really want the kids to come away with, and these were what we felt were most important. So the program was 3 weeks long. We started July 10th, which actually worked out perfectly because that was when the ESY summer school students started, and they came all on the same buses, which we did not know until the very first day. So that was kind of crazy because we had many buses going, and we said, oh, we don't even know which buses our kids are coming off of. So that was our first learning experience, get the bus numbers from transportation for next year. But our program was only 3 hours long. And actually, Mr. Pirro came on the very first day. He just happened to be there, I think, for ESY. And all of our kids were congregated in the lobby of Calkins Road, and it was like 11:20. And he was like, where are you guys going now? And we were like, we're leaving. See ya.
Well done.
But we actually felt that was a very great length of time. for the students and the teachers, especially it being our first year. 3 hours felt like a really good chunk of time, and we were able to get a lot done in those 3 hours. So we opened it, we started registration from, I think right after spring break was our, when we sent out home things to students. By May 15th, which was the transportation cutoff date, we had 43 students registered, which was amazing because Shayna said if we could get 7 students enrolled that she would run the program, and we came back and we had 43. But then, things kind of change as families make different plans for the summer. So we ended up with 35 students as of June 30th, and when the kids got off the bus that first day, we had approximately 25 and a very consistent attendance rate of 25 to 26 students pretty much every single day of the program. We had between 4 and 6 teachers each week, and so we had kind of a mix of, we had a reading teacher all 3 weeks of the program, and then we had a mix of like a week of a social studies teacher, a week of a science teacher, a week of an elementary school teacher, and so we kind of were able, we just had like a bunch of different pieces that we were able to fit in content to. And then we divided the students into 3 different groups based on their grade level. So we had a large K through 2 group, a 3 through 5 group, and then a 6 through really ninth grade group. The theme of our 3 weeks was water. So we really ran with that and made it very open-ended, and just tried to come up with some essential questions like, why is water important and how do we use it in our lives? And that was our focus for the 3 weeks. So we did a lot of different science experiments, as you'll see in a couple slides. We went on a few field trips that had to do with water, and it was funded all through Title III grant money.
And I just want to add, for the attendance rate, we had multiple students who were scheduled to only come for 1 or 2 weeks
Yes.
of the 3 weeks, and then came to us and said, I asked my parents, I'm not going to go to this camp, I'm going to come for the 3 weeks, and completely changed their schedule because they were having so much fun. So I think for us, that was such a nice thing, is to see that kids really wanted to be there and were enjoying it. So we, that alone, I think we felt tremendous pride in.
I think our Calkins Road kids too, when they got off the bus that first day, they were like, I'm too cool for this. And that was sort of why we had some of the attendance drop, because we had a large group originally registered. I think we had like 10 students at least in our 6th through 8th grade group, and that number decreased down to about consistently 3 or 4 kids each day. So we do have an idea to kind of rectify that for next year, but the students who did stay, which that's Alondra and Josina up in the top left corner, they actually became like really fantastic mentors to our younger kids. So we have an idea for how we're going to keep them engaged for next year. But I think they were a little, like they felt like it was almost too babyish for them in the beginning, so.
We crammed so much into these 3 weeks, it's honestly hard to narrow it down. But as Kaylee had said, we separated into 3 different groups of students, and they rotated through 3 different classrooms every day, and each classroom was working on different activities. So for our social studies unit, over the 3 weeks, we worked on geography, and the kids made salt maps. We were a lot of the mess at Calkins Road. There was a lot of paint, and but it was a really nice way to kind of blend. We had the students work on making maps of North America, and then we did a lot of comparing and contrasting of their home countries and differences, and then they got to decorate them, and then we talked about the different geographical features that we are so lucky to live around and what that means for us. And it was really nice. Each kid really got to put their own spin on it. And it was nice having them be able to kind of teach us about their home countries and incorporate that in. And they were so proud being able to speak about where they come from. So that was really nice. We, as Kaylee said, our focus of water. So our text that we used throughout the whole time with our older group was A Long Walk to Water, and it was, I think, amazing. The kids responded so well to it. The discussion prompts and questions that they brought up and were engaging with was really phenomenal to see. And then we, unfortunately, were unable to finish the book, but we found a way that we're going to be able to continue it once school starts so they can find out
luckily all those
bookends.
students are mine.
They'll come back, so.
So they're just going to come to me anyway.
Yeah.
So we can really actually do the book a lot more justice by giving it the time that it's worth. So we'll actually be able to start the year right off with that in our ENL standalone class. The kids also did some bubble art down there. That's Ismael doing some bubble watercolor, which was a great idea at the time, and we will never do that again. But it was really cool. They did some art. They did some learning about the water cycle. So Sherry's main goal really throughout her sessions with the kids was to get them to understand the cycle of water and its importance. So they actually did some like pen and paper, really traditional school. Jessica Seeger brought in some science experiments. So the kids did like vinegar, the egg and vinegar experiment with that. And then they did the saltwater eggs the following day. And the kids actually, on their salt maps, they all decided to decorate the map as their home country. Mm-hmm. So that was super cool to see. I think they had spent a lot of time in the Calkins Road Commons where we have all of our flags, and so they were really intrigued with that, and so they all made their background as their flags. Mm-hmm. Lori thinks she's going to do this with all of our Calkins Road kids. I think she's nuts, but I support her. And so it was really great. I mean, that was 30 kids we did maps with, but she wants to do it with 100, so we'll see. But that was actually they really got it because they were able to have that hands-on experience.
And our older kids even researched what the colors meant of
Yeah.
their flags, their home flags, and presented it to the kids. They were really engaged and excited. And some of them, knew like 2 of the colors and were researching it. It was really interesting to see.
So our first field trip was the Sand Patch. And this was, I actually had never been on the Sand Patch, and I have grown up in Rochester my whole life. This was a total home run. They loved this field trip. Even our older students, this is Hossein in the left, he's headed to Sutherland. He filmed the whole thing to show his parents because they had never been through a lock before, and I had never been through it either, even though, I crossed that bridge every day to get to school. So they were extremely engaged. They asked amazing questions of the conductor of the Sand Patch. It was a beautiful day, so we went down the canal through the lock, and then we turned around. They learned the Erie Canal song, and they were just extremely excited to be out in Pittsford.
Mm-hmm. Week 2, we took them to the Science Center, which they absolutely loved. I had one girl come up to me and tell me it was the best day of her life. She had never been there, and she thought it was the coolest place she'd ever seen. And this was really fun. We tried to, as much as we packed in a lot of work, we also were mindful that it's summer, and we tried to balance that with some fun. So this was really nice to just watch them be kids and explore and have fun, and they absolutely loved it. There was, as you know, there was so much different water exhibits, but we went to all the exhibits, so I think it was really great for them to walk through everything they have. And like Haley said, they just asked the most amazing questions. And that was, I think, one of the field trips that we probably could have spent like 5 hours there if we had the time. It was really wonderful. The last week we took them, we tried to load in a lot. We took them to the fish hatchery, the library, and the Pittsford dairy. The fish hatchery, we didn't really know what to expect, and it was absolutely amazing. 2 of the managers came and talked to our kids, walked them through what they do, why they do it, the different fish, all the animals. The kids asked the most amazing, engaging questions and just could not get over that we have this and that why they have it, and that it, loads into the Arundecoit Creek and the lake. They got to feed the fish. They absolutely loved it. That was, I think, a really pleasant surprise, at least for me, how engaged they were with that. And then we did a scavenger hunt at the library, so we got to incorporate a lot of different components in terms of different components within the book and how you find books, and fiction and nonfiction, which was really nice. And then we took them all to the dairy as our kind of culminating activity, which was really nice. And thank you to the generosity of student services, we were able to get all the kids ice cream, which they of course loved. It was one of the 90-degree days, so the timing worked out very well.
And a special thank you to Marie, your assistant, for making that happen.
Yes.
Because she came through for us on that, so.
Yeah. So I think this was the last day or the second to last day, we interviewed some of the kids to ask them what they liked about the program, because ultimately that's what we want to hear, right? What was the most exciting thing for them from their perspective?
This is Ismail. He's headed to Hawkins.
My favorite part of school that it was to make friends with my friends and teachers, and I learned so much from this Hawkins Road, and yeah. My favorite thing about summer camp was meeting new friends and going on fun field trips. My favorite part about the summer program is that you get to make friends, and it was actually more funner than school actually. And since it's the last day, I thought I'm gonna just go on a field trip. And instead of that, we actually are doing school shopping, but even better.
Our favorite part about summer camp was making friends and having fun.
So on the last day, Shayna's idea was to kind of send the kids off with some swag. So we decorated our own T-shirts this year, and then we had bought them like the little cinch sacks that they could put their notebooks and pencils and things in. And then on the last day, we gave all the kids like little Play-Dohs,
Crayons, books,
Yeah.
about different
Yeah.
varying levels of books about water.
They
So
were
that's
just
what
little
she says
things.
she got to a school
Yeah.
supplies shopping.
but they were very excited.
My favorite thing about summer camp.
And then for next year, I think one of the most exciting things about this program was that on day one, we've been working off this shared document. It's like 35 pages long at this point, but it was just something easy for us all to access, where we would keep like our daily schedule or our to-do list, or like who was doing what, who was on for each day. And I think like day one, people were like, next year we should do this. Put this on the shared document for next year. So we were already like really thinking like, this is a go. This program was really successful, and next year when we do this again. And that was awesome to hear people say. And so like we said, we would really like to get our older students back as mentors, or give them some community service credit hours for coming back, because they were very helpful to us. So we really want to keep them engaged. We would really like to do an anchor text for all 3 of our groups. It was very helpful for our older students to have that every single day. And midway through the program, we were like, we probably could have done an anchor text for all 3 of our groups. And it would really help us focus on those literacy goals. We've talked about maybe doing a new theme. Do we want to keep it water? But a lot of our kids every day, they would find like a frog in the grass, or
There's a
a
lot
mouse.
of animals outside
They were like
Hawkins. I don't know.
obsessed, yeah. Every day waiting for the bus, so they made that little sign. So maybe like a new theme next year. Obviously, we will continue to start planning this earlier and earlier. So we're looking for a snazzy name. If you have any great acronyms, I just thought of like Excel off the top of my head, like Extended School Year for English Language Learners, but we're taking any ideas. We would love to actually get some T-shirts made next year, or maybe like get the paw print on those Pittsford cinch sacks for next year, just to make it look a little bit more legit. And we would really love to add in math next year. So I've already had teachers come to me to say, hey, I couldn't be involved this year, but I heard it was awesome. Could I jump on for next year, which is fantastic. So adding in math would be really wonderful for the kids to, again, address some of those gaps. And although we love the Pittsford Library, we really didn't do our Pittsford CSD librarians enough justice. And I have a great relationship with Tony Ballard, the library standards leader, so we're really hoping to collaborate on a much more deeper level with our PCSD librarians, because we think we can really do a lot with that for next year. Does anybody have any questions, or would you like to know anything else about the program?
I just have to say, as someone who does not work with these students, because my school does not have ELL students, it was such a privilege and an honor to work with them. What they bring to our district is truly amazing, and they are such phenomenal kids. I was like, I think I want to switch buildings. I want to work with them. But honestly, it was so rewarding, and yeah, every single adult we had working on the program was like, I'm in for next year.
Yeah.
I mean, it was so phenomenal.
Yeah. And honestly, I have to say thank you to Robin too, because I don't have an elementary background or the counseling background, and so every day Robin would start a morning meeting to really keep that consistent experience for our elementary students, and just having her expertise as well gave us that elementary lens, because that first day when all of our youngest kids were crying, all of the middle school teachers were looking at each other like, what is this? Even though obviously we both have our own kids, our own, that young age, but it was just very funny. So we just had a really wonderful group of staff that gave a very well-rounded experience to the kids, so we're very grateful for them.
Yes, and thank you to all of you for letting us run the program. We really appreciate it.
Yeah.
Thank you, and we look forward to hearing about next year also. Thank you.
I just also just want to say, despite the first day, how quickly you saw me run out of the building. I really saw a lot of great things. But I have to go back to just the human aspect of it with, when you think at the crux of what, like, I meet with new parents to the district all the time, and their biggest worry is, will they make friends? Right? The first thing is, will they fit in? And then we go from there. And thinking about going to a new school, coming from a different country, and then how that's magnified is crazy. Mm-hmm. And then having hear them making the friends throughout this, and also seeing it during the year, I think is a credit to the program and a credit to the school district. And when you say how much you learn from them, I love that you chose the theme of water. And I was talking to a student who had to walk a mile to get water before coming here. And you think about that and what we complain about, and it puts things in perspective about the trials that happen around the country and even outside of Pittsford. And it kind of brings a sense of perspective to life. And I think you do learn a ton about from the students and from their families. But what I love the most, I think, of all is that you created an atmosphere where they could belong, where they can feel included, where they could feel part of something special in Pittsford. So thank you both.
Thank you. Thank you. Next, we'll have our special education report from Ms. Woods.
Good evening. We have Committee on Special Education and Preschool Special Education recommendations on the consent agenda.
Thank you. And now we'll have our superintendent's report. Mr. Bureau.
Okay, I have to increase my font. I do not have my glasses on. There is not a need for an executive session this evening. So for your consideration, we do have a policy recommendation and approval for policy 8330, objections to instructional materials, controversial issues, and library materials. So I want to just talk us through that, as sometimes we do a first reading, and the majority of the time we do two readings. So this policy was amended in March of 21, and then again amended in November of 22, and is being presented tonight for your consideration for approval without a second reading, given the desire for the regulations and processes to be in place for the start of school. So for those of you that aren't aware, once a policy is created, then there's regulations that are put behind there, which is how you carry it out. And then with the regulations, there's often forms and procedures that follow. So the changes to this policy are due to Pittsford trying to strike a balance between First Amendment rights parent and guardian rights while still supporting students, coupled with living through our 2 previous policy implications of book challenges. So we're trying to find the right spot to land on with this. So I will highlight the proposed changes and then ask if the board is amenable to approving without a second reading. So distinguishing between mandatory classroom materials and library materials are the overarching differences between the last policy and this policy. The new policy does not allow for community members to challenge the library books because library materials are not mandatory readings. But students have the option of choosing books based on their interest. So we're trying to weigh those 2 things. However, to that end, we also recognize our libraries may contain books that parents and guardians do not want their child reading. So you can see all of the different balls in the air and things that are at play. So while community members can't challenge the library books to be removed, parents and guardians can certainly disallow their child from checking the books out, and we'll create a process for that by working with a librarian. This would be a process that we would need to create and communicate through regulations and forms, which is the time-sensitive part of the policy request. So thinking about the library in itself, we do not want to take the parents out of the equation in any way, shape, or form. We want to provide books for students. We want to do the right thing. And we feel like we're in a place where we obviously can't certainly accommodate or make everyone happy, but we think this is like the ground to land on with our 3rd amendment to this. It's our belief that this practice strikes a balance with the parents and guardians' rights to have a say in the library material for their child, while acknowledging that there's a spectrum of thoughts and beliefs about appropriateness of materials based on cultures, religions, political affiliations, family values, etc. As a district, we do believe that books should serve to provide students with both windows into the realities of others and mirrors that reflect their own lives, experiences, and values. This is why we provide students with texts written by a wide variety of authors representing a wide variety of perspectives and experiences. It's through the written word that we better understand ourselves, and we learn more about the people we share this world with, including our students' classmates. This is in large part our desire to allow students access, but at the same time recognizing we serve approximately 12,000 parents and guardians as well, with varied perspectives, and believe they have a right to have a say in what their child has permission to check out from the library. So this is our attempt to try to strike that balance. Community members, parents, and staff can still challenge mandatory instructional materials. However, they must now provide evidence they have read the text that's in question. This is another change in our policy, and it reads as follows. Prior to an instructional material challenge, again, things that are mandated or taught in the classroom, evidence of having read the book must be apparent. This may occur through a phone conference or meeting with the ASI or the designee. We felt this change was necessary so we can ensure those requesting a challenge had the entire context of the instructional material instead of an excerpt, as we expect the same from our review committee. For example, one of the books that's been recently challenged is 800 pages long. This means that several staff members and parents on the committee need to read all 800 pages in order to make a decision relative to should this book stay or leave. So just in fairness, we're asking that the person that is doing the challenge has also read the book. The remaining amendments are as follows. One is regards to timing of the challenge. As we received 4 challenges from one individual in June, I believe, totaling well over 1,200 pages. Given that we have to pull together a committee and doing this during regents, final exams, graduations, year-end celebrations, I'm asking the board to consider the following parameters. That no reviews, that 60-day window, will occur between July 1 and Labor Day. Individuals may only submit one instructional material for review per 60-day cycle. So in other words, we had no checks and balances for how many books can be challenged at one time. And what happened before was we had 7 challenges, 7 or 8 books. I think So we had 4 and 4, so we had 8 within a short window of time, and that means 8 times we're bringing committees together, 8 times we're pulling books from different districts together. And it's just not doable. So trying to find a practical approach to this. What the new policy would recommend is saying that if an individual is really concerned about, and really that's, of all the challenges we've had, only one has been in the classroom. So we're thinking this is reasonable. So individuals can submit 1 instructional material challenge per 60-day cycle, so we can allow that system to work. The last change was regarding appeals of a decision to ensure a timeline is established, and that reads as follows. Appeals of decisions by the review committee must be submitted in writing to the superintendent within 10 days of receipt of the decision. The superintendent will then submit the appeal to the Board of Education. That kind of tightens up the policy and allows transparent communication of when the decision is made and when an appeal can be brought. And just for your reference, in our board bylaws, policy 1410, the board has the right to do a first read with a majority yes vote. Given that the regulations have to be written, the process has to be considered, the forms have to be developed, the communication has to happen between this group and the buildings. It's time sensitive. So I'm asking for your vote first, if you're okay for looking at this as a first reading, and you've also received this policy draft in advance. So just by show of hands, if you're okay with this being a first reading versus whether or not you need a second reading. So my question is, by show of hands, are you okay with the first reading? First read only. Okay.
So hearing that, is there a motion to approve policy number 8330, objections to instructional materials, controversial issues, and library materials? Kim and Dave. All in favor? All opposed? The motion carries.
So the last thing I would share, every year we have multiple meetings over the summer. We had our 2-day workshop with all stakeholders, and then we had another half-day meeting today with every administrator in the district, and our conversation was how we are ready to now move beyond the pre-COVID or the post-COVID environment and get back to an initiative where we bring rigor, engagement, authenticity back into the classroom as a priority. Our students are nowhere near still from a lot of aspects where they were pre-COVID, but they're a lot closer than they were last year and closer than they were the year before. And so it's time now for us to do a little bit of a push and get back to rigor and get back to finding ways to truly engage our students in real authentic ways, and focus on not only best practices in the classroom, but also best practices in the building. And just like our E&L presentation, just letting kids creating an environment where they all have friends. I guess that's the simplest way to put it, where everyone feels welcome and comfortable and happy to be in Pittsford. I'm a parent of 3. All 3 of my kids are different. I want the same for all 3. As they go through school and they go through life, I want them to feel accountable, but I also want them to feel loved, valued, respected, appreciated in school, no matter who they are. And that's the second part of our initiative, alongside of the best education possible relative to rigor with our students. And that's my report. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Pirro. Next, we have our consent agenda. Is there a motion to accept the consent agenda as presented? Sarah?
Second.
Jeff? Thank you. All in favor? All opposed? The motion carries. Thank you. At this time, is there any old business? And is there any new business? Okay. Next on our agenda is public comment. And you will notice on your agenda that you all received that public comment has been condensed to, the guidelines are now found at pittsfordschools.org/public comment. We condensed actually the amount of time on the agenda, a space on the agenda was a little overbearing. So everything you need to know about public comment will now be found at pittsfordschools.org/public comment. So there have been a few updates. We had a summer retreat and we reviewed our public comment guidelines. And first of all, the focus should always be respect and civility. They're required during our Board of Education meetings, particularly as we have students attending the meetings as part of their coursework. And some may be watching online also. So we want to, model the behavior for our children, and we ask them to be their best, do their best, and make a difference in the lives of others. Also, our online submission forms, the timing has been adjusted. It's still available 5 days before the scheduled Board of Education meeting date, but the comments must be submitted prior to 4 p.m. the day before a regular meeting. So make note of that.
Can I just talk about that part for a second?
Yes.
And really, that is, that's been a tough part. We moved it to 4 the night before to be respectful of the people submitting, because before it was the noon the day of. And oftentimes, our Tuesdays or Mondays or Wednesdays, Deb and I are in meetings till 3 or 4 o'clock, and we can't orchestrate all of that. So we've moved it to the night before, so before Deb leaves on Monday or the day before a board meeting at 4 o'clock, she can check and make sure she's appropriating the right people that are allowed to speak for public comment.
Thank you. Other items we'd like to reinforce, this has not changed. The speakers who submit the form will have the floor for no more than 3 minutes. Yielding time among speakers is not permitted. And so we'd like for you to keep that in mind. For speakers who do not follow meeting and decorum protocols, the speaker's privilege to use the floor will no longer be recognized by the Board of Education. And also at this time, I'd like to add that as board members, we are accessible. Public comment is only one vehicle of connecting with us. We also have, you can reach us by email. Any of us is accessible by email, by telephone, or by snail mail, like the old days. So I'd just like you all to be aware of that and make note of that. And we're very interested in your concerns in our community. So with that, we will move forward to public comment, and I would like to ask Mr. Shaughnessy, Michael Shaughnessy, to please come forward.
Does this need to be up? Can I put it down? Yeah. Mike Shaughnessy, 4 Standish Way. Some items reviewed over the past several months. Removing the suggestive, inappropriate, and overwhelming content from PCSD libraries. 8 books are submitted for removal from the PCSD library system, 4 unanimously accepted to stay in the system by the Board of Education. Gender ideology issues, and particular confusing and overwhelming books placed in the elementary school libraries recently over the past several years. And in these books, there are reference to which restroom should they use at school, and a transgender boy playing girls' sports. Number 4, many of the Pittsford community have questions for the school district relative to the new mental health rooms at the Barker Road Middle School. Maybe a place to start for the school district is to share with the Pittsford community and the PCSD parents the construction, implementation, and new plans for this new health rooms in the Barker Road School, which involve, what it involves, includes, and for the support of the mental health services for the PCSD students. FYI, recently published in the publicschoolreview.com, New York, Monroe County, the subject, Top 10 Monroe County Public Schools 2023. The top-ranked public schools in Monroe County in 2023 are Hilton High School, Brighton High School, Spencerport High School. Overall, testing ranking is based on the school's combined math and reading proficiency test score ranking. Pittsford Sutherland is 5th, Mendon was 8th. Pittsford Central School District high schools had lower reading level ratings than the top 4. Pittsford Sutherland High School is 310 in the national 2022 rankings. Pittsford Mendon High School is 286 in the 2022 national rankings. In 2012, Mendon was ranked nationally 107, Sutherland was ranked 23. What hopefully and will or should be done for the Pittsford Central School District with the Board of Education is to take a collaborative approach with the parents to address the issues of this significant drop over the past approximate 10 years, instead of a focus on placing pornographic and transgender-focused books in the school libraries. Take steps immediately to pull the rankings back up to number 1, again, where we belong for the Pittsford Central School District, and stop settling for the continual decline in rankings. And as I mentioned, there was some books in Park Road School, and I summarized those for you.
Hey, Mike, I'm sorry. Can you tell me that source of the rankings?
Public, I was in my,
It's in the email.
it was
I didn't read it.
publicschoolreview.com, New York, Monroe County.
Because what I read was Sutherland and Mendon were 1, and Pittsford was number 1. So we must be looking at different sources. And Barker and Calkins were number 1, and all 5 of our elementary schools were in the top 10 in reading and math. In both reading and math.
Ranked where? What's your source?
Multiple sources. So if you wanted to submit a public comment for that, I'd be happy to follow up with you, but I'm not sure what that is.
Thank you. Next, we'd like to ask William Skuse to please come forward.
Tim Ballard, the subject of the recently released movie Sound of Freedom, a movie about child sex trafficking, said the following when asked about grooming. Quote, "The pedophiles want a kid who is sexualized, who will participate and choose to have sex with them. But you have to get a kid sexualized first. Kids whose brains are crystallizing still, they're little sponges. You give kids obscene books, and these kids, by the time they are 13, are sex robots. The pedophiles are salivating." Unquote. For several months, people have been exposing the use of obscene books in the Pittsford schools to the members of the Board of Education at your meetings. We've given you quotes of the obscene language in the books. We've given you copies of the obscene pictures in the books. We've submitted challenges to these obscene books to the school administration. What have we gotten in return? Silence from the Board of Education. An enthusiastic defense of these obscene books from the superintendent. What is the purpose of having obscene books in the Pittsford schools? It's clearly not to educate. It's to sexualize the children, to groom them for the pedophiles. The board members, the superintendent, the teachers, the librarians, and the administrative staff are all involved in sexualizing the children in the Pittsford schools. I understand why the pedophiles involved in these policies are grooming the children in the Pittsford schools. What I don't understand is how members of the board, who may not be pedophiles, allow this to go on. What are you going to do when one of your little boys comes home and announces that he's no longer a boy, but a girl? What are you going to do when it's one of your sons who starts hooking up with strange men on the internet by using one of the apps he was taught to use because of your policy? Is that what it's going to take to make you end these grooming policies? Only when it affects you personally? What about the 6,000 other kids in the schools? What are you doing to protect them? Take a good look at your kids when you get home tonight and think about what your policies are doing to them.
So I'm actually kind of sick right now, but I want to go back to your questions about rankings. So I just pulled up, just for the heck of it, U.S. News and World Report. Pittsford Mendon, number 1. Pittsford Sutherland, number 2. So I think we need to be really careful about the sources that we're using and what we're saying. So this was last year. Number 1 is Mendon. Number 2 is Sutherland in the Monroe 1, Monroe 2 area in New York State. When I look at my children when I go home, what I want from them is for them to be happy. I want to make sure that they feel loved, that they're supported in any way, shape, or form. Using the word grooming makes me sick, just so you know. It makes me sick to my stomach. And if we're grooming, we're doing a horrible job, because we have about 1 student a year that is taking out the books that you're challenging. We have 1 or 2 students total that are taking out the books that you're challenging that are costing us several hours, several weeks through all your challenges. So what do I want? I want my kids to live in a global world where they can be themselves, where they know adults are around them to help them, where regardless of their religion, regardless of their political affiliation, regardless of whoever, whatever we want to compare it to, that they're treated as human beings. And as a school, you want to say our policies are responsible for this? Yes, I'm not happening. Your time is up.
Well, you addressed me.
No, your time is up.
All I would say is, if these books are so seldom used, why don't you take them out?
Then I would say, if they're so seldom used, why are you taking up all of our time?
All of your time.
Yeah, so much of our time and us doing our diligence. And I'm not going to engage in this anymore. And I think that the part that's missing with this conversation is you're not in our schools, seeing our students, working with families, seeing 6,000 different kids coming through, and really trying to help them be successful and feel good about themselves at the same time. You're coming in with one perspective. We're coming in with a breadth of perspectives. We also want, from a human being perspective, for kids to feel good being here. Not for everything that we've been hearing for the last 2 months that you've been speaking. You're welcome to keep coming back, keep saying the same thing, and we're going to keep doing the same thing. We're going to do our diligence. We're going to review the books. We're going to make sure that these are books that are the right books, or the best books, or books where kids can see themselves in. And we'll do that with fidelity. But I'm not going to sit here and hear you continue to talk about grooming students. All of our students are beautiful students. They're human beings. They need to be treated that way. And when you come here and speak in public comment, what you're doing is alienating a lot of our students. So
what I'm doing is trying to inform the community of what kind of books are in the schools. These are not helpful to children. These are not education tools.
Your own library system sites show books checked out, checked out, a lot of them.
Thank you, Mr. Skews. Thank you. Is Allison Botone available? Alyssa, thank you.
I'm here today as both a concerned parent and educator to address staffing shortages and the impact it's having on quality of education. Just a few years ago, I listened to Superintendent Pirro outline post-COVID reopening plans. He cautioned one factor that threatened to close our schools could be from a shortage of staff. As both a middle school teacher and mom who'd spent lockdown months around the dining room table helping my second grader and first grade triplets navigate online learning, I was eager for them to return to the classroom and in-person instruction. From my years in the classroom, I knew what best teaching practices looked like, and this was far from it. I began substitute teaching in my children's elementary school, completing long-term vacancies in grades 3 and 5. I was paid the basic daily substitute rate, even though for months I wrote and executed lesson plans, conducted home communication, and assessments. I was not financially compensated for these duties, but wanted to help. It was a stressful time in the classroom as we implemented COVID protocols of spacing, sanitizing, wearing masks in classrooms with temperatures near 90 at times, alternating pods of half classes without much time to grab a bathroom break. Yet despite these conditions that would be considered inhumane in a corporate setting, I watched Pittsford teachers overcome these obstacles, deliver engaging instruction, and lead our anxious children through it all. While area job postings are filled with listings for certified Spanish teachers such as myself, this year the district changed my position to one that requires travel to 3 buildings, teaching middle and high school levels for 0.7 or 70% salary. Recent news has been filled with headlines such as this one from March 2023, teacher turnover hits new highs across the U.S. I've heard assurances that our district is taking measures to fill classrooms with the best candidates available. I disagree. Of all the teacher surveys I was asked to complete, not one inquired about our well-being, ways we could be supported, or how things could be improved. Our days begin with an email of class periods needing teacher coverage as we're short on substitutes. I've witnessed reading specialists being pulled to cover classes, case managers and special ed teachers out with no one consistently providing services to students. Generally, there are higher class sizes, less one-on-one time with students, increased stress, less planning time, and extra duties. Quoting this article, and I gave you the link, research has found that teacher churn harms student learning. Students lose relationship with trusted educators. Inexperienced teachers are brought on as replacements. As a partial solution, I know local parents are investing in Sylvan, Kumont, and private tutors. I ask the board to consider, as a top school district, what is truly being done to retain and support current teachers so that our students are receiving the best instruction and services. Thank you.
Thank you. At this time, is there a motion for adjournment?
So moved.
Jeff and Sarah. All in favor? All opposed? The meeting is adjourned. Thank you.